we problem solve.
Mm.
And I think takes a certain kind of mindset to, look at that as an opportunity. A lot of times people look at problems as excuses, and, I think as a leader, you have to open people's eyes to say, hey, problems within a company, especially a small business that's still growing, is opportunities. Instead of complaining about your supervisor, why don't you be your supervisor? Instead of complaining about this not happening, why don't you go figure out how to make it happen?
Welcome. You are listening to Season 2 of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, a podcast that exists to inspire legitimate and authentic leadership in the workplace and beyond, and I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. Now, here in Season 2, our theme is Making the Leap. You may call it leveling up, uncharted territory, or expanding your reach. It's those times in our life and our careers when we take on a new challenge. You'll discover how you can successfully navigate your own huge leaps as you hear stories from me and others. This season, I'm excited to be interviewing some exceptional leaders from a variety of fields who'll share some of the big leaps they've made. You'll get a glimpse into what's enabled both their professional and personal success. Now, a quick housekeeping note. If you're finding this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and be sure to leave a rating or review. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening or wherever you're tuning in via video. I am super excited to get this Season 2 going on the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, Making the Leap. And with me today, I have a guest in studio, and you're about to hear about the leaps that he's made. His name is Ricky Cortez, and he is the CEO of MCA Communications, which is a second-generation family-owned business based in Houston. So, Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here.
Now, I'm going to read your bio just to kind of make it squeamish for you. Nobody loves to hear their bio read.
Pulled it straight off of LinkedIn.
I'm going to do that for you. So, Ricky, if those who don't know, some of you do, he's a hands-on CEO for MCA Communications, as mentioned, and his expertise is really business development and operations. He began his career in the industry working as an installer during high school, has over 20 years of industry experience, and has learned all aspects of the business from the ground up, literally. Now, MCA was founded in 1983 and has grown from a small cabling subcontractor to a full-service nationwide technology integrator. And recently, you guys got ranked as a top 50 largest audio-visual integrators in the United States. MCA has over 300 full-time employees nationwide, and over the years, MCA has diversified the service offering through Ricky to include AV, wireless, DAS, IT services, and professional services. So, as a professional, or I should say as a visionary leader, Ricky has a strong passion for technology, building strategic partnerships, and investing in workforce development for tomorrow's leaders. Again, Ricky, I'm super happy to have you here. And I just want to see, I guess to get us started, was there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners as you think about your background?
Man, just the only thing you missed out is a big time Houston Texans fans. I gotta comment on that since we're here in Dallas. But no, I mean it's a good way to sum it up. And proud to be here again, just to kind of talk about that experience. It's kind of really important to me to highlight kind of the way I started, because I really believe it's kind of the foundation of how I lead and kind of who I am. So just happy to dive into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into that too. Before we get there, in terms of that first job, maybe let's give our listeners a little bit of taste of how we met. I think it was through a mutual friend, and you take it away from there. What happened next?
Sure. Well, actually, so for me, it was a prospective client, and it was a client who I had engaged with for an RFP process, and he was giving me some really good constructive criticism as to maybe how to, just sharpen my skill set. He gave me some great compliments about the company, but noticed that if I wanted to really take my leadership to the next level, that I needed to focus on that. And as someone who's more of the producer, right, I'm used to doing the selling, I'm used to doing the work, obviously. It kind of did open my eyes to the fact that, okay, maybe I haven't worked enough on the leadership side of things. And that was just a great moment to say, hey, I'm gonna kind of focus on, sharpening this skill set. And I'm glad we met. Definitely was a little challenging at first, just to kind of open up and talk about things that sometimes, it's just like things you don't want to talk about, things you don't want to necessarily get into. But
yeah, and for context, what you're describing is work with me as a coach.
Yes.
Yeah. And, I was still fairly early in that process for me
Right.
too. And you were one of the earlier CEOs that I began to work with. I've worked with a few since.
Yep.
And talk about what that was like, the idea of like getting a coach for those,
Sure.
because I think there's some out there who, it's a little intimidating,
Very
right?
intimidating.
What were some of those emotions like initially, and how did you work yourself through those?
Definitely just a little, I would say, nervous about, speaking about topics that maybe, throughout the busy day, you just don't want to necessarily get into, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, do we really want to go down this rabbit hole of conversations? But I always tell people, and, this is common said, that it does get lonely at the top, right? Like they say. And what's great about this experience for me is I was able to speak and not worry about, what happens if I say something I didn't want to say, right? A lot of times as a leader, you got to be careful with your words. You got to be careful with what you say. People are looking at you and watching you. So if you start coming across as nervous or scared, all of a sudden everybody is picking up on that. So with the coach, you can be a lot more just natural. And I think, being natural is going to allow you to, get comfortable. And I think once I got comfortable, then it's like, okay, confidence came back.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really kind of needed, because we are growing through a time in our company where it's just really getting to that next level. And, focusing on leadership is one of those things that is really going to scale a company.
Yeah. When you think about going into coaching, the idea is I'm trying to go somewhere from where I currently am, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to position either myself, the company, I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to scale, I'm trying to work through some challenge.
Sure.
I'm curious, what was the challenge for you at the time you were considering coaching? And then through the coaching process, what happened through
Sure.
that process for you?
Well, I think obvious first one is didn't think I necessarily needed it, right? I mean, I think CEOs, you got a confidence level of, hey,
Sure.
why am I going to listen to this guy tell me what to do, and you don't really understand the importance of kind of working on stuff like that, right? It's hard to prioritize. I mean, there's so many other things to do. It's just like working out. It's just like anything else, right? It's just like easy to do it once you get going, but the hardest part is getting started. And I think in my situation, it was really presented to me as, hey, this is, something that I need to do to take that next step. And I looked at it as, hey, there's a reason we met. There's a reason this happened. Let's just stop what I'm doing and get it done. And, before I knew it, I enjoyed it. I looked forward to it. It's like, all right, I get to get some stuff off my chest today. If it wasn't for the time commitment, it's something that I would love to do all the time. But the reality is, as a busy CEO, you're juggling a lot of tasks. And, for me, it's learning how to find more time to set aside so that you can do things like that. It's all about just, sharpening that tool so you can be stronger and, continue to lead.
All right, last thing before we jump into your early days as an installer. Biggest difference before coaching versus after, either for you, the way you lead, your company?
Sure. Well, I think I took a lot out of our experience in a way that I learned that I, too, need to be a coach. And I think for me, it was a learning experience to kind of see how you coached me, and it really motivated for me to be a coach. And all these years I've been a player. I've been the doer. And most entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs were the doers. I mean, it's how we got into the business. And the key to me is transitioning from the doer to the coach means you have to, trust. You have to be okay with things not being done your way, and you have to have a lot of patience. And those are things that I kind of learned from our experience. Things, the way you would ask me questions and the way you would, respond to the questions and answers I had. And I just enjoyed that interaction because, without you telling me what to do, somehow I always came up with the answer.
That's right.
And I'm like, wow, you didn't even tell me what to do, but it's like I have my answer. And, to be honest, these are techniques that I've learned. I took these techniques and applied them to my team, and I even told my team, it's like, hey, call me coach because, I'll play if I need to, but if I'm having to play, then that's probably not a good thing, right? And it's a good feeling to know that I do have a team around me. And I think it is a good feeling when you see people respond to that It's
Yeah.
almost like they get re-energized. It's like, okay, you're trusting me.
Yeah.
All right, I'll work a little bit harder for you. Just coach me. Let me know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, really, for leaders to be coachable first, so that they can coach someone else. It's like gotta lead by example.
Mm-hmm. Well said. All right, that's a great start to today's conversation. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
One of the things that's often said is that our first jobs, those early years, those early jobs, can really make a mark on us.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that was certainly the case. My first job was digging trenches and ditches for irrigation systems early in the morning,
Right.
here in the hot heat in Texas in the summertime, right?
Wow.
And then right after that, I bagged groceries for a year.
Yep.
At a local grocery store. For sure, those things impacted me in a major way. For the first time ever, I realized, man, I really need to go get my education and
For sure.
focus on school, because I don't want to do that.
For sure.
Thinking about your own start,
Yep.
you started working in MCA
Yep.
in high school as an installer. First of all, tell the listeners, what is an installer in your business? And then two, how did that experience impact you?
Yes. So very similar. Being an installer these are the guys that work in the field on construction sites. They're the ones working in the heat. They're the ones pulling the cable, installing the equipment, installing the technology. I mean, they're the ones essentially doing all the work, right?
Yeah.
And my very first job, actually, speaking of the Texans, was the stadium when it
Is
got
that right?
built. Yep, which was 22 years ago.
Wow.
And at the time, I don't feel this old, but at the time we didn't have cell phones. So my job was to go ask the people what they needed, like if they needed more material. And I had to go from the trailers, which were like, in the way parking lot, to the middle of the job site, to the middle of the stadium. And just a day of doing that grunt work, and of course got out that, this is the owner's son, so let's get him to sweep the floors, let's set him to do all this stuff. Only lasted actually a few days before I told my dad, hey, I'm going to go back to school for a little bit.
That's hilarious.
And same thing happened. I mean, I had appreciation for the guys, but at the same time I said, man, this is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
I went to school, but I returned back to the field because I realized that there was so much more to learn in the field.
Mm-hmm.
I also got bored very quickly in the office. And I'm a kind of person that needs to be around a lot of things. I get bored very easily, and I realized that our business is in the field. That's what we do. And being around our employees that are in the field, customers that are there,
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to see firsthand not only what we do, but what problems and challenges we face.
Right.
And without being out there, you don't really know what the real problems are.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can see things at surface level, but to truly solve a problem, you have to get to the root of it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I learned early on, because unfortunately, even being a communications company, we always had communication problems.
Sure.
Things always didn't go from the field all the way back to the office. I learned to utilize my, ability to communicate with people in the field, people in the office, and just understand everybody to help bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that I do very well is I can see different people's perspective, because I've done a little bit of everything,
Mm-hmm.
enough to know what it's like on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, something that I feel like you got to continue to do is see things from everyone's perspective. It's what allows you to solve problems, and just be a little bit more compassionate to what people are doing and seeing.
Yeah. What I just took away from what you said is you can't be afraid, if you want to be a leader, to get your hands dirty,
Exactly.
right? You got to get in the mix.
Yep.
Now, fast forward, and we're going to come back in a second, but fast forward, you're now CEO of this company that you started working as an installer in some 20 years ago. Could you have imagined, when you were doing that work at the job site at the Houston Texans facility, that you would be where you are today at that point?
In some ways, yes, some ways no, because when I was in high school, I was probably, I guess, 10th grade. And again, I don't feel this old, but back then there were still newspapers in the school library. And what's funny is, out of coincidence, my dad was in the paper.
Okay.
And he was in the paper for winning an award, an award that actually we just won again. And I remember reading that. And I knew my dad owned a business, obviously, right? But I didn't really know what he did. I didn't really understand how successful he was.
Mm-hmm.
And that paper really inspired me to get into business, right? To just be able to be able to say I own a business, right?
Mm.
And you know, I obviously didn't know what it would take. I mean, I thought it was simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once I went out to the field, I realized, okay, I have a lot to learn still. But honestly, since day one, it has always been my mindset to be the leader someday. And I think with that mindset, it helped me understand in order to do that, these are the people I have to lead someday.
Mm.
So if I'm going to lead these people, how am I going to earn their respect?
Mm.
And to me, the only way you earn the respect is to show them that you're willing to do the job that you're asking them to do. And that's something that I still preach today, because now I'm in the role of hiring the next generation. And these are kids that are telling me they want to own a business and they want to do it in 2 years. And I'm like, hey, I'll support you. I'm not going to be negative to that.
Yeah.
But why do you want to do something fast? It's not about doing something fast. It's about doing something great, good. And obviously, I do think that I did it maybe fast, but at the same time, it didn't feel that way, And I think we have to, take the time to do things right.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, if you see yourself doing that and you focus on that, it eventually will happen.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah, there is, I think, for all of us, just given our devices, AI, everything can be done, or most things can be done relatively quickly.
Yes.
And so we all have this microwave society mindset a little bit. We want it fast, and
when we want it.
When we want it. And sometimes, it's about right over fast, right? It's doing about quality over speed. Not every time,
and
but a lot
people
of times
don't
it
see
is.
all the time you put in.
Right.
They think, hey, Ricky, you became CEO really fast. You were only doing this for a few years. I'm like, but I've been doing this since high school.
Right.
I mean, the reality is I've always invested everything into this industry, right? It's 24/7 for me. It's not just a few hours a day. It's not just, the last few years. I mean, it's been my entire focus. And I think that, people have to understand the level of commitment it takes to be really good at something.
Right.
And if you enjoy it, then that's like the best of both worlds, because you enjoy it. So it's really not hard. It becomes almost a challenge. And I think that's when you really start to kind of get to that next level, because now you're just pushing yourself.
Yeah. Love it. All right, so here we are. We're talking about making the leap on season 2. And so far, we've made a leap from being an installer, going back to school. So now at some point you get your degree.
Right.
And I'm curious, what's the next leap for you?
For me personally, I struggled with being a vocal leader. I mean, I'm more of an introvert type person.
Okay.
I'm more of I'm just going to show you what I can do and do the work, more lead by example. And that worked to a point. I think as we grew as a company, it's more people to lead. As we grew location-wise, I mean, I'm not even in the same office as the people that we lead. And one of the things that, you helped me with is really, speaking in front of people and speaking to more people at a time. And it's something that I've gotten the most positive feedback on. So everybody's telling me, hey, thank you for speaking. You said something that really helped me, and, looking forward to the next meeting. And it really gives me more confidence, because I've always been just hasn't been my personality. I'm just more of the quiet person type. So I think, if you don't feel like you fit, the leadership typical, just work towards it. At the end of the day, I mean, it's everybody's got a different kind of style. That's okay, because I think that makes you more, relatable. I think when people can see, hey, I remember when Ricky was shy and quiet, and now he's up there, doing this.
Right.
I hope that inspires somebody who's similar to take that same path.
Absolutely, and I think there's something to be said, because here you are as a CEO of a large company. We won't talk the dollars, but it's not as small as you might think it is. It's a big company, and your personality type might not fit in terms of what people expect a CEO to look like in terms of being introverted. But guess what? For the listener, there's hope out there for you. Regardless of your personality type, there's a place for you in leadership. I think that's something that I just took away from what you said. So you're making the leap now to going, I think what we talked about in coaching, from kind of the singular microphone to having a megaphone,
Yes.
right? What was that leap like for you? And I don't mean necessarily just in the last few years, but I imagine even going back to, hey, I graduated college.
Hmm.
At some point in there, you now have to start maybe leading a team. What was that experience like for you the first time you now had a team of people looking to you, reporting to you?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, I don't think I figured it out until a few years. I mean, I think for me, again, being the player, it was more about I'm just gonna go do my job and try to keep up with me, right? That's kind of the way I led for a long time, and a lot of people lead that way, and it creates high performance teams because it's like you got to keep up. But at some point, I started realizing that not everybody thinks like me. Not everybody. I mean, it's not their company. They're not as motivated as me. They're not going to be.
Right.
So I started to learn that we're all motivated by different things. And once I finally took time to understand people, and it's like, well, what's motivating you? Why are you here? What do you want me to do? Then I started to realize how much impact I have on, understanding people.
You said something that I got to just interject on. It's when you took the time to begin to understand people and their different motivations.
Yes.
That made a step function increase for you in terms of your effectiveness. What clicked in your brain?
Talking to people. Talking to people, talking to them on their breaks, lunch. When I was in the field, I built a relationship with these guys, and I always thought, you're working for money. I mean, that's what I was working for, but not everybody is. Some of them, obviously, at the end of the day, we all get paid. That's why we're all there. But to understand everybody's passion and to understand their background and to really, get to know their why, right? And a lot of times it's for their family. A lot of times it's to prove something, the motivation, whatever. But when you understand that, you can really lead better because, again, it just becomes more personable. And I think what people want to know is that knowing that they're there, right? You're understanding that they're different. And I think that it's hard to do because we're all busy and everybody's just focused on, getting the job done.
Yeah.
But I realize that when you can actually do that part more, then you're going to, again, tap into somebody's full potential and, really start to grow.
I have to go in a little bit here because there's a misnomer out there that says that if you want to run a great business, you just got to be focused on execution. You got to be focused on the metrics. You got to be focused on getting people to do their job. And what I hear you saying is something different than that. For our listeners out there who are going, what are you talking about? Help people be their full potential and get to know these people in lunch breaks. Like, that's not the way you run a company. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I say different because they're people. And I think that if you want a business to run itself, I think that's the ultimate goal of every business owner is for it to run itself. Then the people in the business need to know why they're there. If they just know how to do their job and, hey, I'm going to clock in and do this, then they're depending on somebody telling them what to do all the time. And if you think about what drives an entrepreneur, what drives a business owner, it's the passion. There's something there that's passionate about, and that's why we get up every day, right? And I don't believe that is just strictly entrepreneurship. I don't believe that only entrepreneurs think that way. I believe that there are people within our company who think that way, and it's my job to take that within them and let them use that because you can become a faster company, a more productive company when people are not afraid to make decisions and not afraid to follow their instincts. And I think most of the time people are taught the complete opposite. In school, in fact, I tell people because I struggled finishing school, to be honest. I mean, I went back and forth. I took classes backwards. I didn't understand it, to be honest. I really didn't even want to go to school because I don't need to learn. I want to learn now what I need to know. Right. And the thing about school is it's just focused on structure. It's focused on you need to do this and you need to do that.
Linear thinking, too.
And that's not the way the world works, right?
Right.
And I even tell my kids who are both in college now that I want them to finish school, but I want them to also work at the same time. And I want them to socialize. And I want them to understand that the way you learn to be successful in this world is to understand everything, and you have to do that by having an open mind. So if you have the ability to go to college, it's great. but you have to also learn people and just learn the job and just have an open mind and really learn to think on your own. I think that's the key.
Love it. So what I'm hearing Ricky drop for the audience is that it's not just about X's and O's. It's not just about execution. It's the reality that all of us are motivated differently. All of us think differently. We learn differently, including you and me, right? Yep. And there's value in understanding people's motivations if you want to get the full potential that's in every person at the end of the day running the company. So I love that. All right. Hey, listeners, if you're busy, and I know you are, but you want to grow your leadership in an efficient and cost-effective way, I invite you to check out my on-demand digital leadership courses at bonafideleaders.com/courses. Now, you're wondering, what do I get in exchange for my purchase? Well, you'll get dynamic teaching and insights, and you'll leave with the tools and practical application you need to be a more effective and impactful leader, wherever you lead, at work or at home. You'll become more confident in your capabilities because you'll know your unique leadership style and how to apply it. You will know how to create powerful and engaging meetings and also how to better integrate your work and life. You'll get that and much, much more. Now, if that weren't enough, with your purchase, as my gift to you, you'll also be added to the Digital Bonafide Leaders community, a real community of leaders like you for networking, best practice sharing, and you'll have direct access to me. Go to the website and you'll find a link in the show notes, and you'll get instant access today. All right, so let's go back now. So at some point, I don't even know when this is, so you tell me, you tell us, the listener, what was the time frame in which you got, let's call it your first significant senior leadership role? What role was that? When was it? What was the mindset?
So for me, it's kind of hard to pinpoint because one thing that, my dad did for me is he included me in a lot of things. Okay. And that's how I learned, essentially. But there was never an official anointing of now you're the leader, right? I learned to be the leader because I kind of had to. I was in situations where my supervisors, for whatever reason, were not doing their job. And, being the owner's son, I felt compelled to do the job. I'm like, this is important. I'm not going to just, leave this hanging. So I used those opportunities to learn. And obviously, my dad gave me the opportunity to learn and fail and not feel like I couldn't try it.
Yeah.
So while I was in the field, he'd also included me in meetings, insurance meetings and bank meetings, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was observing and I was learning.
Yeah.
And the thing I also picked up from him is how he was teaching me. He wasn't teaching me by telling me anything. In fact, I don't know that he ever really sat down and told me how the business worked, but he allowed me to see it. He included me in everything. And I think that that just kind of prepared me. So whenever there was challenges, I just said, hey, let me solve that.
Yeah.
And one day I looked up and I said, hey, I think it's time to change my title because I think I've been doing this role for a little while. And I tell people that too. It's like you don't need the title to lead. I mean, and even in our business, I tell people you don't need my permission to lead. I'm giving it to you now. Now, obviously, a good leader needs to recognize somebody's efforts and make sure they have the support and the guidance to be successful. But people need to not wait for that opportunity because, I didn't. I mean, to me, there was a challenge. I had a solution, solved it. If I didn't, I learned from it, solved it again. And I just knew that I was in this environment that enforced initiative. We weren't, I wasn't going to get in trouble for trying. No, I wasn't going to get in trouble for trying. And I mean, I remember I was a job in the technical side. I had to go out to a job and the system wasn't working. This was an audio system, right, for a courthouse. And the court was actually in session. And at the time I was still young and I'm like, why are you sending me? I don't know anything. Yeah. But one of my supervisors at the time said, well, if it's broke, how are you going to make it any more broke? Like, you can't break it anymore. It's already broken, right? And it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I can't make it any worse. So let me see what I could do. Well, I ended up fixing it. I ended up, learning something and built some confidence. And I learned, I said, again, if something is broken, what's the worst you're going to do? And that just kind of taught me a lesson to not be afraid to try something and to take the failures as lessons learned. And, I'm here today because I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned from every single mistake and didn't give up on those, efforts. I just said, all right, I'm gonna try this time. That's the culture that I built with the company because to me, we're in this environment that's always changing. So we have to react really fast. And the chances are we may not have seen that challenge before. I mean, COVID, who knew what to do when COVID hit us?
Right.
So
there wasn't an easy button for that,
no,
was there?
You can't go back and say, well, what did we do last time we had COVID? Never happened before.
Right.
You know, when you think about our business, you know, my dad started, we were installing payphones. Well, we don't have payphones now. We were installing pagers. We don't have pagers today. So in our business, we're always doing something different. So you always have to adapt and learn because there's no record of how you did it before. So the only really like you know, you could say, you know, the only really like lesson to learn is, well, we figure it out. That's what we do. We problem solve. You know, and I think takes a certain kind of mindset to, you know, look at that as an opportunity. A lot of times people look at problems as excuses, you know, and, you know, I think as a leader, you have to open people's eyes to say, hey, problems within a company, especially a small business that's still growing, is opportunities. Instead of complaining about your supervisor, why don't you be your supervisor? Instead of complaining about this not happening, why don't you go figure out how to make it happen? And from a customer standpoint, you know, I love problems. I tell customers all the time, tell me your problems. Tell me what don't you want to do. Tell me what other companies can't do. Give me all those problems because those are opportunities. And, you know, where we're at today with that mindset. And I think the key is to just cultivate that mindset amongst everybody in the company so that we all become problem solvers.
There's so much to unpack in what you just dropped right there. The question I asked you was about mindset, and then you were given all kind of nuggets throughout there, and then you ended with mindset. There's a few things I took away. One, take initiative. There's a take initiative mindset that you have from the very beginning. Two, there's a drive that's inside of you. Maybe it started when you saw your dad in the paper in high school, and you're like, man, it would be cool for me to be the leader. Third is that you see problems. Your mindset about problems is not, oh, the world is ending.
Right.
Your mindset is, oh, wow, this is great. It's an opportunity to learn.
Exactly.
As I'm listening to you talk, and I'm reminding how when we work together, it's the same conversations that we used to have, right, in terms of how
Kinda
people look at problems.
Get into the answer, yep.
Yeah. And then this undergirding piece is that while you maybe weren't anointed to a senior leadership position, you almost had this working apprenticeship happening over time. I'm curious, particularly for those who are in a family-owned business, maybe there's some offspring, right? There's brothers and sisters, and some of them may want to be, you know, running mom and dad's business. Maybe others don't. Give the listener who's curious about that, how do you position yourself properly as maybe the owner is considering who they want to have kind of take the reins of this business? What's the mindset that is appropriate, respectful in a family-owned business context?
Tell you, my mindset was to pretend as if that wasn't my dad in charge of the decision whether I can become CEO or not, right? So what I did is I looked up in our industry what it took to be a leader. What does it take to be a subject matter expert? What does it take to run a company? What is our competitors, what do their leaders do?
So when you say look it up, what does that mean, Ricky? Break that
I did
down.
research. You know, when I was young, I did research on who MCA's competitors were, how big they were, what they did. You know, again, my dad included me in business meetings. He took me to expos. You know, I got to meet a lot of the successful business owners very early on. So I had a lot of mentors, you know, and I knew that I was going to, you know, anybody was going to, if I was going to get out of the shadows, right, of my dad, or if I was going to get respect from people, I couldn't just be his son. It's not about just his son. It's about being somebody that is qualified and capable. And what I like about our business is all it took was effort. There was no, you know, it's not like you go get a degree to do what we do. I mean, school is helpful, but at the end of the day, you know, I truly believe if anybody wants to be a leader, you can. You just have to put in the time and effort.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was blessed with the opportunity to walk into this position, right? To have somebody as a mentor, somebody as a leader. But I always just told myself that, hey, don't you know, look at him as your dad. Look at him as an owner of a company, and you know, I think that's my mindset since day one. I think the challenge is, you know, you got to be careful with entitlement. You got to be careful with thinking that, well, I'm going to get this or do that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you start to have more family, it gets tricky, right? Because, you know, there could be struggles. I think in our family, one thing I've always respected is my family's respected my passion. I think since early on, they knew, okay, Ricky's going to be the one that's going to jump into business because since day one, that's where my passion was.
Mm.
And my family has been supportive, and they help in many different ways. And I think the challenge is, how do you, you know, keep the culture of a family business, but at the same time, how do you run it like a corporate business in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's not easy. I mean, that's the balance.
So right? That's really good. That's actually a great lifting off point. I want to come back to that, if that's okay, because that can be tricky.
Right.
And I want to give the listeners a sense of what that can be like. Before we do that, there's something else that you hit, which was being adaptable, particularly for your industry, is not only something that is valued, but almost a necessity.
Yep.
To do really well. The nature of what you do is technology, which is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not have a documented, repeatable process for how you go solve. I mean, to me, what you talked about with the courtroom is a great test.
Right.
Court is in session.
Pressure. Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder to some extent how much of that was just a test of Ricky's moxie. Can he handle this pressure situation?
I think that's what it all been. I mean, every time I've been tested, I feel like I've gotten stronger, you know, and I feel like all these lessons have been good lessons. You know, COVID, for example, go back to it. I mean, that was the toughest time for us as a business, but, you know, the year after COVID was our best year. You know, it just made us stronger, right? And I think, you know, growth is all about staying uncomfortable so that you can get comfortable, and then you get uncomfortable, and then you get comfortable. And, and I think I've learned to almost like expect that now. And if things get a little too easy, I almost go look for another challenge. You know, nothing is really driving us to expand. I mean, we don't have to expand. We don't have to do these things other than...
Yeah, because you're a private company.
Right. Yeah. You know, and a lot of people, you know, build companies to really support their lifestyle, right? And I'm happy with my lifestyle, but why am I still growing? Why am I still pushing? Well, because I actually really get a sense of satisfaction from knowing that we're always growing. And I like the culture that creates, because it creates a culture of other people who always grow.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're pushing each other.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, nobody's having to tell anybody what to do, because you're almost all kind of pushing each other to do better. And if you have a culture of great people, which we do, you're essentially always growing without even really setting a target. That's the crazy thing, is I don't have targets. I just tell people, you better do better than you did last time. And, you know, we laugh, but that's the reality. It's like, you know, we don't care about what we did. We more care about where we're going.
Yeah.
And you're just constantly kind of having that mindset.
All right. There was something else as we were unpacking all that you dropped in terms of those nuggets a little bit earlier, which is the opportunities that you were exposed to, being exposed to insurance, being exposed to business meetings, going to expos, meeting these business owners. There's opportunities all over the place.
Yes.
However, while we might get exposed to opportunities, not all of us grab those opportunities the same way.
Right.
What input do you have for the listening audience who is saying, man, I don't have enough opportunities. You know, I don't have a situation like Ricky where I was able to go to these expos and this and that. What's your message to people who say, I just don't have those opportunities? What do you say to that?
I think, don't know that I agree with that, right? I think what you have to really do is try to, you know, number one, kind of have some gratitude, right? Understand, I mean, we all have something to be grateful for, right? Nobody has it all, but there's something that you can say, okay, I'm grateful for this, or I'm glad to be in this situation. Maybe it's not the best paying job, but maybe you can learn a lot in that job. Maybe, you know, maybe your job's hard, but, you know, that hard is going to teach you something. I mean, there's always something good out of every situation. And I think most people just need somebody to help them see that. You know, I think in my situation, you know, I had people who, you know, showed me that. I had people who I was able to talk to and say, hey, how did you build this company, and how did you did this? And early on, and I still am, I mean, I'm always a sponge. I ask a million questions and not shy about asking questions. And And I wish people would ask me more questions.
Mm.
You know, I tell my employees, I'm like, you know, there's nothing that you can't ask. Now, I may not, you know, tell you what you want to hear, because I
Right.
think a lot of people are afraid of what they're going to hear. That's why they
Right.
don't ask. But, you know, there's so many resources that are around us. And I think that, you know, there's just really no excuses this day and age,
True.
you know,
Yeah.
with the technology, with the resources.
Yeah.
You know, if you're trying to find out or learn about anything,
Mhm.
I mean, it's really easy these
Yeah.
days.
So perhaps people are confused if they say I don't have opportunities, and sometimes maybe it's a mindset of gratitude.
I
Gratitude
think that,
maybe
and I also
helps.
think that maybe they're scared. Maybe they don't really want that opportunity yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of an easy thing to say, I don't have an opportunity, so that I don't have to say that I failed at that opportunity. So usually when I come across those people, I try to sit them down and say, okay, well, I'm going to be real clear to you right now. You have this opportunity. Here you go. Let me see you do it. And I have to prepare for them not to succeed, because the reality is they may not be ready for it. But what I want them to learn is that's okay. I don't expect you to succeed because you haven't been taught and you probably aren't prepared, but that's actually the way you learn.
Yeah.
You know, and so many people think they need to be ready to do something, and they need to be taught to do something, and they need to have a degree to do something, or they need to have permission to do something. No, you can't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And I, as a leader, just try to encourage people not to fail. I think my frustration comes when people don't try. And if you don't try, and I'm trying to get you to try, then it's like, it's not much you can do. You know, you have to have that own motivation internally. And I think some people just have not had that, you know, ability to change that mindset.
When you picture season 2's theme, making the leap, I picture somebody on the top of a mountain and kind of jumping out into the open territory, hoping to get to the other side, not exactly knowing whether or not the other side is going to be as smooth as where they just left.
Right.
And so you talk about a failure or a fear of failure. What could you offer our listeners that you've done to overcome this
Easy.
fear of failure?
Failed a lot.
You failed a lot.
That's easy. That's the easy part.
Okay.
I failed so much that I'm not afraid of failing, you know? And the thing is, you know, I give the credit to my dad, I give the credit to my family, I give the credit to my support staff that doesn't, you know, hold this much pressure to me. It's like, as long as I'm trying, right? It's like you're doing what you need to do. And I think a lot of people at the end of the day maybe have bad experiences. Maybe they failed once and it's like, you know, it had ramifications.
Right.
I've been lucky to be in situations where the failures actually taught me something. And so those are all, I go back and, I mean, those are good memories. Those are things that, man, if I hadn't done that, I would not have learned that.
Most people don't equate failure with a good memory. Talk about that. Well, what do you mean when you say it's a good memory?
I know
to
what
fail?
not to do now. You know, to me, it's like, all right, don't do that anymore. And to me, it's like, I feel like, you know, the vision gets clearer as you kind of learn from your pitfalls. You get smarter, you get stronger, things get easier. You know, I think right now I feel very capable because of all the challenges I've always overcome. So walking into work, hearing of problems that I solved over and over again don't stress me out anymore, because, man, that's like, we just did that yesterday, right? That's not a new problem. And I think for the people that are just afraid to take that leap,
Yeah.
you know, you have to get used to making the wrong decision. And then be real quick about making the right decision. You know, to me, I'm a very quick decision maker.
Course correcting.
Yes.
That's what I hear you saying.
Yep.
So you go off course.
Yep.
And then recognize, I'm
People
off
were
course.
like, well, Ricky, you just said to do this last week.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it didn't work. So let's go do this. This is why. And they're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is I'm teaching that it's okay to be wrong. It's not, I'm not this genius. I don't know, you know, everything. But what I help people do a lot of times is make decisions because they get stuck.
Yeah.
They have this fear of, well, I'm going to be wrong. So, okay, go ahead and do this. Let's make this decision together. But letting people make their own decisions is really key to letting them build up that confidence. And that's really what happened to me. And I was able to really have that experience and gain a lot of confidence from it.
One thing I've experienced is that, and it's related to what you're just talking about, when there's a culture that allows you to have a safety net
Mm-hmm.
when you make mistakes, when you raise your hand and you're wrong, when you ask a bunch of questions. When people work in that kind of an environment, I think it actually breeds innovation.
Yes.
And I think it actually breeds growth. And I think that's what I hear you describing. At the same time, on the flip side, it's also true. When there's an environment of we must be perfect, we cannot make mistakes, I think it breeds hesitancy
Yes.
in people. And the culture that I see that was created for you through your dad and others is one where you can fail and still course correct and be okay.
As long as you course correct.
And I'm hearing you also say that as the CEO of MCA, you're wanting to build and sustain the same kind of culture for your employees.
Yes. It takes self-awareness, right? You have to have the self-awareness to accept that you're not doing something as good as you should.
Yeah.
Right? Me being told that I need leadership coaching, I mean, it stung at first. I'm like, dang, that kind of hurt. But you know what? You're right. And I think that thing is why I also wanted to show people that, hey, look, I can admit that I'm not what I need to be yet.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to show you is I'm committed to growth as well.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's move the story forward a little bit to you asked somebody, hey, I think maybe I need to change my title.
Right.
So talk about when that was, what the title change was.
Well, for me, title is more of an external thing, right?
Yeah.
It helps customers identify, your role within a company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a point in time where I wanted to be that person that a customer knew they could come to and that an employee knew they could come to. And, in our company, I mean, it's pretty loose. So I just told my dad, hey, I want to be the president. Okay. And I became the president. And I said, hey, I think I'm ready to be the CEO. And he's like, okay. And the thing is, nothing really changed. I mean, I still was doing the same job. He was still doing the same job. I mean, we still have always led together.
Mm-hmm.
But it did come with a little bit more pressure because guess what? Who's going to get the phone calls? Guess who's going to get the emails? It's a person that has the title. And that's what I learned that I didn't realize right away is, there comes a lot more responsibility
Mm-hmm.
with saying that you're the CEO because guess what? There's nobody above me, so I can't make excuses, right? If a customer comes to me, there's literally nobody I can point to say why something hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So I think for me it was a challenge that I wanted to put on myself to say, okay, I want to have this accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel the pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to take it off my dad. I mean, honestly, that was another thing that had motivated me. Seeing him, when I was younger, I'd see him do these things, and I'm like, man, I wish I could help him.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, I'm just not there yet. I'm probably gonna get in his way. But I knew the way to help him wasn't to tell him what to do. The way to help him was to help take those problems off his plate. And I'm now in the same situation. People are like, hey, Ricky, let me help you. Let me, take my advice or do this or do that. I'm like, that's not really helping me. You want to help me take this problem off my hand. Take this problem.
But I don't want that one, Ricky.
Well, and you're not ready to be a leader yet because a leader is somebody who is actually taking on responsibility. Not just saying what needs to get done. Anybody can do that. But it's taking on responsibility to get it done, getting your hands dirty, showing people how to get it done, and inspiring others to get it done. And when you do that, then you become that leader that you're saying you want to be, that you're saying somehow I need to allow you to be.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, it's not really that. It's almost like you got to do it on your own, and then the title comes with it.
Okay, so customers are calling you now. You're now the president and then later the CEO. But you wanted that pressure.
Yep.
Now you've got it. Talk about those early days when you realize, man, I'm for real accountable now. And the reason I want to ask you to talk about that is because that's a place where I think a lot of our listeners are now. Maybe they've volunteered themselves for additional responsibility, or maybe they've been promoted.
Sure.
They've made a leap from manager to director, what have you. And now it's getting kind of hot in the kitchen. Talk about those early months, weeks. What was that experience like as you realized, man, it's on me now?
I think, and it still happens, a constant reminder that, you're responsible for the people. It's not just the task, right? I mean, it's easy to do the task that I've always done. That's easy. It's what I've always done. But that's not my job anymore, right? My job isn't to just go out and sell or go out and design. I mean, the job is to lead others.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that takes a lot of reminding because it's very easy for the business owner to fall back on what they're good at. Leadership is not something I've always been good at. It's something that I enjoy, but it's something I have to focus more on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to have the self-awareness to realize that, hey, this is now my full-time job. So if I'm not doing this full-time and I'm, doing the work myself, then I'm not helping somebody grow. And I think that's something that, it's kind of a hard reality, because you're almost, in a lot of ways, kind of putting yourself out of a job, but I look at it like, if a company can run itself because of the leaders that we built,
Mm-hmm.
then I did that job.
Yeah.
And if we keep growing, then I'm never going to be out of a job, because there's going to always be people that need to be led and taught. And that's what's exciting about, MCA, the company we have, the industry, is there's really no limit. I mean, we can continue to grow and continue to
Mm-hmm.
to hire and continue to train, and there's always going to be somebody to grow.
Okay, so earlier in our conversation, you talked about mentors that have been in your life,
Yes.
maybe even business owners. Talk to us a little bit about, as different opportunities have come your way, different challenges have come your way, what's been your approach, and how important, I guess, how has it been for you to have a support system? Can you talk some about the importance of that and how you've leveraged that support system?
100%. And it starts with the family. I mean, my wife has been married for 22 years. We met in high school, actually, got married very young, so we grew up fast together.
Yeah.
My parents obviously have been great role models, and I think for me to be able to have a support staff that doesn't add added pressure. There's really no, like, they're not impressed by what I do at all. I mean, they could
That's
care.
the best,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Like, I don't impress them. I come home and I got to do dishes, and I got to, fix things that I'm
Yeah.
not good at fixing. At the end of the day, I'm just a dad to them. And I actually like that and need that, because at work, there's a lot of pressure, right? And I think that's why it works, because, I can go to this safe environment, which is the family, and just be myself. And I think that what people need is to kind of have this environment where they can be at peace, right? It's a grind. I mean, mentally, leading a bunch of people is a grind, and you have to have a way to almost reset every day. Something I learned too,
Okay.
because at some point you start to run out of battery, or your cup overfills, or whatever analogy you want to use.
Yeah.
And if you just reset it every day, then you're good. If you don't reset, next thing you know, you're just running out of battery. You're kind of not yourself.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to mentors, I'm the kind of person that will listen to anybody who's willing to give me advice. Honestly, if they're going to take the time to give me advice, I'm going to listen to it, because I believe that there's a reason this person is here. I believe there's a reason I needed to listen to this. Doesn't mean you need to act on everything that you hear, but I just soak it up, observe it, and I feel like it prepares me for so much, because I'm just always observing information.
I love that. And, what I'm picking up is, over and over, just like when we met and coaching together, is, there's two types of mindsets in the big scheme of things. I guess you could call it a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Right.
And what I pick up from you, Ricky, is an overwhelmingly strong growth mindset. And that is what enables you to work through a lot of the challenges, refill your battery, your
Yep.
cup every day, is that you've got a mindset that says it's about continuing to improve. It's about growing. It's about learning. I don't know everything. That's okay.
Yep.
And that seems to me to be a big part, in addition to your support system, of what keeps you going. What do you say about that?
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy the journey. To me, it's like, it's not really a destination for me.
Mhm.
It's like, it's just, as long as it's fun, as long as it's challenging, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm making progress, and I'm going to be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
If I look back and there's no progress, and it's like, man, I need to work harder. I need to do better.
Yeah.
But I'm satisfied, and I'm happy with progress. And that's what I tell people. Just do a little bit better.
Yeah. Do a little
And-
better. Try.
Yeah. Next thing you look up, you're going to be doing something you thought you couldn't do.
All right. So there's Making the leap from a career, personal perspective, professional perspective, then there's also making a business leap. I
Right.
want to talk a little bit about that for just a little bit. You've clearly gone into new markets.
Yep.
Right? You've gone into new geographies.
Yep.
You've, expanded business with some customers.
Yep.
Reduced business with other
Yep.
customers. You've leveraged some suppliers.
Yep.
Some banks, different banks, etc. Right? You
Tried it all.
So, as you think about making the leap, let's first talk about expanding or even a product extension,
Yep.
or a new market or a new
Sure.
customer. What's been your approach to either say, yep, I'm going to go, let's go MCA,
Right.
or let's pull back, let's not? What's been your approach?
I listened to the customers.
Okay.
I listened to, I was blessed to walk into a company that had established customers. And the one thing I learned right away is, and let me say relationships, right? People,
Okay.
because people move around different customers. But I realized that those relationships, my dad invested a lot already in them, time, money, lessons learned. And it's so hard to get new customers. I'm like, why don't we just keep these customers, right? And I learned this from my dad. It's like, look, just go talk to them. Ask them what you should do. Ask them where we need to be. And it's funny. They'll tell you, hey, can you go over here? Can you do this? Can you get into this? Now, as an entrepreneur, guess what? We have the ability to make our own path, right? Pave our own way.
Mm-hmm.
And who's better to listen to than the client, or the employee, the person who's right at the ground seeing the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you got to pay attention to where your business is at and how your business got to where it's at. And for us, it's the customers. So anytime we've opened an office is because a customer is pointing us in that direction. Anytime we've added a new service is because a customer is pointing us in that direction. And it's just really, to me, again, taking the mindset of taking challenges and turning them into opportunities. And I think we're going to continue to do that and just basically let the customers guide us.
Okay. Awesome. You've talked a little bit about the fact that, it's a pressure cooker. When you're at the top of a company, it can feel alone at times.
Right.
And although you didn't say this, I'm going to just throw this out there for the listener. That's the beauty of having a coach.
Right.
Is that you've got a thought partner who's alongside you,
Mm-hmm.
and they want you to win.
Yep.
And they're objective. So they're not in the day-to-day of whatever's going on.
Right.
They can look square at the situation and just talk about what they're seeing and what they're experiencing with you.
Plus,
right?
that information won't get out.
That's right.
I have conversations with our employees, partners, and it's funny how things obviously get out all the time, right? And that's one of the biggest challenges with communication is when people
Mhm.
hear things, second, third, fourth hand, right?
Yeah.
So that does force me to hold a lot in. It's like, well, I can't say this now. I can't say that because I don't want it to get out and be, misunderstood.
Yeah.
So a lot of times things just don't get said. Things don't get, spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And I think saying things out loud is really a good way for things to become a possibility.
Yeah.
And, during our coaching sessions, I was saying things that I've never said out loud before. And it gave me more confidence to be like, okay, that doesn't sound that crazy.
Right.
And, it was just a good way to kind of, again, build up that confidence so that, you can go out there and communicate clearly, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. How clearly can you communicate the vision?
Yeah.
And the better you can do that, the better the team's going to perform.
Yeah. Yeah. Clarity about the vision, where we're
Yep.
headed.
Yep.
That's what gets teams aligned. So we started to talk about this pressure cooker, right, of being at the top. And I'd like for you to share with our listeners, whether they're a vice president of a big old company, whether they are, running their own business and maybe it's just a storefront,
Right.
and they've got 12 customers. At the end of the day, it's still on you,
Always.
right?
Yep.
And I'm curious, could you just share with our listeners some of the very practical tools and tips you've used to sort of manage the pressure that you must feel on a day-to-day basis? Do you play golf? Do you work out? Do you, have wine every night? Like, to be practical, talk about what do you do?
I mean, honestly, I'm a little wired. I was kind of wired as I was younger to be somebody that just doesn't stress a lot,
Okay.
I used to say very nonchalant. But what I feel like my mindset has been is I don't focus on things that I can't control. I think so if you can't control the situation, there's nothing you can do about it. The customer's upset, then there's nothing you can do about it, so why stress, right? Now, if you can control it, then that gives you a little clarity to focus on things you can control. And I think to have that clarity, yes, you got to do things that relieve stress, right? You got to exercise, you got to work out, you got to have, kind of a healthy lifestyle, which to me has made a difference for me.
So be specific. Like when you say healthy lifestyle, what have you done? What's something that you do regularly?
Personally, I mean,
Yeah.
I go to sleep earlier, right?
Okay.
I wake up now earlier, work out, and I don't do it every day, obviously. I wish I could, but I can tell you the days that I do, I always feel better going in the office because I've already worked out, just kind of have a better mental situation. And then, just do things that you enjoy. I enjoy spending time with the family. I enjoy fishing, traveling and stuff like that. Everybody's got a little bit of a different tolerance, right? So you got to kind of know yourself, know when it's time to hit that reset button, know when it's time. I mean, there's times that I just leave the office like in the middle of the day because it's like my cup's full. I'm gonna just
You pooped.
because when you're at that point, you're not 100%,
And you're
right?
not productive,
No.
right? At the end of the day, you might say
Right.
something to somebody a certain
Exactly.
way. And
So I've learned that
yeah.
too. I don't send emails anymore right away. I use the timer, the schedule thing. So if I decide to change my mind, I delete it or edit it. I try to do, the hardest things first in the morning when I'm most clear.
Okay.
I don't really have any employee meetings late in the afternoon or,
Okay.
When I'm tired. It's all about kind of, figuring out when you're at your best, kind of have that self-awareness. And, obviously we're not perfect. So just figure out what works for you. And then I always look to guidance. I mean, I've talked to, trainers, and then people that can kind of, give me tips on how to just stay mentally and physically fit. And, that is something that I am going to focus more on too, is just kind of, making sure I'm taking care of myself just so that I can, be strong and be in the right mindset to do what I have to do.
Yeah. Love it. All right. So from a personal perspective, you touched on it a little bit, been married 22 years. Man, you got me beat by a couple of years. You got kids
2 kids already in college.
So talk to the listener a little bit about what are some of the success tips that you found to be useful in integrating, is the word I like to use. Balance, I think, is a misnomer. So in integrating kind of a successful home and a successful work.
No, that's good. I mean, I've actually, took some coaching tips, on the personal side too. I think, as a father, right, as a husband, you're obviously a leader as well. And I think we too often think people just need to do what we say, especially our kids, right? We just need to tell them what to do. But I look at my kids just like the employees. If you tell them what to do, they're going to do the opposite, right? And I don't want my kids to be followers. I want them to be leaders. So what that means is I don't need them to do something because I told them. I want them to do something because it's the right thing to do. So I think just, explaining, teaching. I mean, I love that my kids have a lot of questions about things, and I'm always going to be honest and just, guide them and really just try to, give them the experience that I had, which to me was, somebody who, didn't give me a lot of direction, but a lot of support. And that's what I feel like, my job is as a leader now. It's just to support.
Yeah, I like that. I just, over the weekend at church, there was this 4-box grid on kind of what you're describing, because our pastor's on a series on parenting right now. And the high support, which is what you're describing, and low authoritarian, if you will,
Right.
is kind of the best way to produce fruit. So, man, your kids are probably doing real good.
They're doing what they want to do, which I love. They're finding their passion. They both asked about the family business, and I said, I want you to find your passion. I want you to go do what you want to do. And if it ends up in this business, then it's great. But you gotta be passionate about it. I believe I'm successful because I'm passionate about it. I don't feel like I ever had to do it. I feel like this is what I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I want my kids to pretty much find that experience on their own.
Something that, unless you're here in the room, studio with us, you probably can't feel, but or maybe you can, I don't know. There's a level of humility that I'll tell you, having worked with a dozens and dozens, literally, of senior executives at big companies, it's not always present.
Sure.
And what I'm picking up from you, Ricky, is there's a level of humility and growth mindset that I'll just say feels unique to me in this space. When you're in settings with maybe people in your industry, peers, or even with customers, who might be tough customers.
Sure.
To what extent does that either help or hurt you as you lead?
I think what was good about me is I'm relatable because of the way that I've learned, right? I think that I've learned from people. And I think I've learned from a lot of people. I've had the ability to have a diverse experience, right? From different types of people, from different backgrounds, and being able to kind of be relatable to everybody and not feel like you're above them or below them, but to be able to be relatable to the brand new employee, to the senior level employee. And then my employees will tell you I treat everybody the same. And I think, that just comes from the fact that I've worked with everybody. If I was, taught how to be a CEO in a bottle or in a vacuum, all I did was go straight to school and got an MBA and did all that for 10 years and then worked, I think I'd be the same person. I think, school gave me a little bit of guidance, but really all the experience of doing it is what molded me into the type of leader I am. And for me, I've learned that to create new leaders, they got to go do it. They got to go experience it. Yeah. How can you tell somebody what to do if you never did it? It's never going to come off as authentic. And I believe I'm authentic because I did it. So it's really easy to just be natural.
Love that. All right, there's a lot that we've captured. We're almost to the end here. And one, mindset. Be adaptable. Be hungry. Be open. Regardless of the leap, just try.
Right.
Instead of being afraid to fail, create a culture. So part of that's on us as leaders to create a culture where people can make mistakes.
Right.
And it's important that you learn from those mistakes and then course correct.
Right.
These are clearly some of the big ones. The other thing I heard is, hey, if you're a family-owned business and you've got people in your family who might be potentially in that succession loop, give them an ongoing apprenticeship type of experience.
Yes.
Give them exposure to stuff.
Right.
You don't have to tell them what to do, but give them exposure to opportunities that may be outside of their natural comfort level or day-to-day job. All those things have been a benefit for you in helping you be successful in making the leap. Of course, balancing or integrating, right, your family life, the things that you enjoy doing, being able to leave the office, 1 or 2 o'clock to say, I'm pooped, I'm done, is something that's also helped you fill your cup and reset on a daily basis, which I have not heard that so much.
Right.
I love the idea. No, it's not like a weekly thing or a monthly thing. Daily, I got to refill the cup.
Yep.
Love that. All right, so that's a lot, right, that you've unpacked for us. Just if you would leave a few last tips or parting thoughts on how folks can be successful in navigating, call it uncharted territory.
Just start. I think that's the hardest thing for anybody to do, something new. The coaching for me, something I had actually thought about a long time, right? I've always looked into doing that and just never did. I've always wanted to get back into working out and just never did. And the thing is, you just got to start. Like, don't overthink it. Just start. Do one class. Try it. Say yes to the next opportunity, and just take it from there.
All right. So if listeners want to learn more about you, Ricky, or MCA, your company, where should they go?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll be right there, liking your pages and your comments. And I'm not a huge social media fan on the personal side of things, but you can definitely look me up on LinkedIn, and you can check out our website at www.mcacom.com. Again, Ricky Cortez, CEO of MCA. Appreciate you having me on the show. Looking forward to possibly doing more.
Absolutely. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Ricky.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much for listening. If you got value from this podcast, don't keep it a secret. Subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with someone you know. Until next time, remember, our world is starving for bona fide leaders. Take your leadership to the next level by applying at least one thing you heard today.